said to his disciples, "Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Why did he say that? What, did he have a bunch of disciples running around who just decided it really didn't matter what their ethics were? I mean, I'm assuming that these are fine Jewish people who are trying to be formed in the faith. These are people that came to a rabbi to be formed in the faith. These are folks like you. Are they just running around saying, "Oh, law doesn't matter, oh, to heck with it"? That's what seems to be implied here. Do not think that I've come to abolish the law. Why would he say it if they weren't thinking it? So it makes me wonder, why would they get to that point? Why might Jesus have to say it? And my friend Mark had some things to say about it. These last 2 Saturdays, what I'm about to do right now is summarize 11 and a half hours of teaching in 3 minutes. But these last 2 Saturdays, we've been talking about levels of pleasure that the human being experiences. The pleasure is a good thing. So we'll talk about a couple of them. The first level of pleasure, that's the pleasure you receive from your senses. The things you smell, the food, the things you taste, the things you can visualize, the things that really just give you pleasure, a wonderful deep massage, sex. All of these things are those physical pleasures that we have. And they're wonderful, but there's a shadow to them. And the shadow comes when they take up too much of our life. When we expect those pleasures to fill up everything for us and make life good and okay. Because then what happens is we get addicted to those pleasures. And they don't do for us what they once did. We can't enjoy a meal when we can't stop eating. There's a second level of pleasure, and that's the pleasure we get from relating one to another. It's a beautiful thing, really. It's a wonderful thing to relate to another person. It lights up everything else. It lights up all the other pleasures. If you're really connected to another human being, how wonderful it is to go out to dinner with them. It's way better than going alone. It's a wonderful opportunity to let your life fill up with the joy and the wonder of connection. But it has a shadow too. In order to be able to live in a relationship, it can't be all about this relationship giving you everything you need to be filled up. No, that's the shadow, because we need to be in a position where we're going to give in a relationship. Letting go enough of the self that we can give in a relationship. That's where the healthy pleasure comes from. Third level of pleasure, I love this one, it's work. I mean the kind of work where you're working towards a cause, something that counts for you. I absolutely love Mark's example. He talked about, men years ago, they would come home 7, 8 o'clock at night from hard at work, and the wife's a little frustrated, right? You've been at work for hours and hours, and she, of course, is wanting her needs filled, right? Her intimacy needs filled. And she's wondering, what's going on? You've been working all this time. How come you're not home? And he says something like, well, I'm doing it for you and the kids. I'm working for you and the kids. That's why I'm doing this, all right? I'm working for that intimacy, but he's actually lying. Yeah, he's working for a third kind of pleasure. The third kind of pleasure is that joy you get when you are accomplishing something, when you are working towards something in the world. There's a shadow to that one, too. The shadow to that one is when it becomes all about the cause that you're working towards, becomes all about your ego, your need to be successful. And finally, there's a fourth level of pleasure. And that's the level of a kind of spiritual pleasure, and a lot of folks maybe don't get there. But there is a moment in life when you tend to drop away that self-encapsulated, the flesh-encapsulated ego, just that you that isn't observing when it falls away and you recognize that you are connected to all that is, when you realize that you're not alone, that in fact you are enveloped by the creative power of God. Now, sometimes that comes in a kind of energetic, ecstatic kind of way, and other times that just comes on you slowly. But no, I don't have to fear for my life because I am not this body, I am not these thoughts. I can let go of these things because I am sitting in the arms of God. Now, when you reach that pleasure, here's the shadow. You don't want to leave. You just want to stay. When you reach that moment of peace, you don't want to leave. And as a result, you're not going to be doing the work you need to do. You're not going to be entering into relationships, giving, and you're certainly not going to be enjoying the simple pleasures of life. So what is it that Jesus was getting at? Why did he say, "Do not think I've come to abolish the law and the prophets"? He was talking to a group of people that were so overwhelmed by the presence of Emmanuel, the presence of God with us, that they didn't want to leave. And Jesus said, "No, I didn't come to abolish the law of the prophets. I came so that that moment of realization that you are completely united to the presence of God, so that that moment of realization will move into the world and change the way you deal with the other pleasures." And the trouble is, that's painful. Isn't it? Anybody given up an addiction here? I know. I'm hoping everybody. Because all of us are addicted to one thing or another. It is painful. It feels like you're going through fire. No, but if you're recognizing that you are about something else, well, then you're going to go through that. You're going to go through that judgment, and it's going to burn away. And you're going to become a truer and more whole person. That's the judgment that is being talked about in this text. When we see that we are angry, furious. Let me be clear, I'm not saying that there's nothing to be furious about. But when we let it catch us up, well, that means we're hanging on to something in our lives in a way that isn't entirely healthy. We want something to occur so that our lives will have worth and value, and those things need to burn away so that we can more clearly channel the presence of a loving God into the world. If we're completely wrapped up into a cause, there's some things that we have to let go of because the cause can't be about you, or I will disclose me. Every preacher I know goes crazy with this one. Am I preaching, am I throwing my life into this task because I want the world to hear of the love and the presence of God? Or because I want to feel important for having told them? I've given up figuring out how much of which is what. But whenever it's the ego involved in that thing you're doing, that's the thing that has to burn away. That's the judgment that comes before the beauty and the goodness and the truth can just emerge and creation begins to shimmer with the presence of God. But there's good news in the midst of this because you and I do not have to let those things burn away all by ourselves. Yes, it is work and it needs to be done. We're hanging on to an image of ourselves that tears us down and makes us look somehow less than what God has created us to be. Well, that has to be burned away, but it's the power of God that'll burn it. We cooperate in this work. And that's what Jesus is calling these disciples, these Talmudim, to be formed within. And that's the good news for you. It's not optional. It's not optional because the presence of God will always seek to burn away those things that are not beautiful within us. But the good news is, extraordinary beauty will emerge from each of our lives as that happens. Believe the good news. That ecstatic, powerful, uniting God will be changing you today and forever.